Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the No Fatwas Given podcast episode 14. I believe it's 14.
14, yeah.
We're about a weekish late here, unfortunately, but life happens. So I am your host, Saad, and I'm joined by my co-host, Fahad and Suhaib. We recently, from last weekend, it's been about a week now, but we came back from the Alif conference in San Francisco. Pretty epic. What do you guys
Alif
think?
Summit. Yeah.
Alif Summit.
It happened Feb 1st. That's when. No,
Correct.
yeah, Feb 1st, right?
Yeah.
That's when it was. Yeah, I mean, it was the first time they had a Muslim kind of startup builder style conference. It was extremely well done. They had amazing speakers. They had the guy who made Truebill, which is now Rocket Money.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was like a huge acquisition, like $1.5 billion cash
1.3,
acquisition.
but yeah.
Yeah, but he spoke at it. We had several other founders, like from Founders Inc. We had some other guys like named Faraz. I forgot what his name was, unless you remember.
Faraz, yeah.
His
Yeah,
name's
Faraz, I think.
Who they founded, like Hardtech. He's in like the space industry, space manufacturing, right?
Many things, but mostly hardware related. And the latest one was space manufacturing, which is kind of crazy.
And then we met like young founders who are like 21 right now, who've already started and sold $4 million revenue companies, which is...
I don't know about $1 million revenue, but they were sold for about $1 million.
No. The revenue reached $1 million, then it was sold.
Really interesting.
Yeah. The AR, I think the AR, right? That's what they call it.
Yeah. Annual recurring revenue.
Yeah, exactly. So he said he sold $4 $1 million AR companies.
That's insane, dude.
Which is
insane.
insane. And he started at 16.
16 is when he started coding. He exited his first company, he said, at 17. So
yeah, and it coincided with the fact that he met this guy exactly 4 years ago, the Faraz guy.
Roughly, that was one of his mentors, but it looks like he already had good mentorship beforehand. I'm not sure what his upbringing and whatnot is, but it looks like he had great mentorship and people who were kind of, pushing him along this entrepreneurship path. It seemed to me, because there's no way a 16-year-old thinks this stuff unless, some God-given gift. Because sometimes it happens, you see these people come out of nowhere from a village farm and they code like the most amazing thing and start selling it, right?
It's not about coding amazing. It's just like there's this drive.
It's a drive,
right?
But it's also intelligence, right? To take something like the way he went about it, right, is intelligent.
Yeah,
absolutely intelligent.
I think it's more inspiration than anything, because when you have an example that you can follow, that's when you're going to take that path. Until you have an example that you can follow, you don't even know that path really exists or it's approachable, right? Yeah. Because trust me, we have a lot of talented and intelligent coders in our own families and in the Muslim world, but we don't all have the access to resources and capital and mentorship and inspiration that a lot of these other founders will. And I think that was one of the central points of Alif Summit, was to connect these people together who have similar backgrounds, have the same faith, have similar intentions, and get them together to inspire one another and build companies. And we met a lot of cool people.
It's actually super important, though, actually, the Muslim identity part about it, because I felt like, obviously, this is not an Islamic conference. It's not ICNA, it's not RIS or something like that, right? This is not one of those. But at the same time, while the topic of the conference wasn't Islam, it was 100%, everything revolved around being Muslim. 100%. So what connected everyone there, entrepreneurs, students, just someone interested, whatever, was our Islam. Islam connected everyone. And then the entrepreneurship came. It's like, hey, we're Muslims. We should really look out for each other. Let's form this community. This is the thing we have in common. It's not this guy's Pakistani, this guy's Arab. No. Islam. We're Muslims, and we should band together to produce something. To be
one of the main host. She was doing the main calling the speakers on board. Her main message was, "We're Muslims. We're builders.
Yeah,
we want Muslim success. We want Muslim startups. We want Muslim founders." And what else is amazing is we found a lot of companies that I knew existed. I never knew they were actually Muslim owned. Mm-hmm. Replit is one of them. Some people knew about Replit, but I personally, even though I've heard of it and everything else, I didn't realize it was a Muslim founder. Right? Rocket Money is a Muslim founder. If many people don't know, it was Truebill before. There was another one that turns out is a Muslim founder.
Prep
Haven, one of the smaller companies that we were actually trying to copy and make our own startup out of. Turns out our competition was a Muslim founder, and we met the person over there.
Now I'm in contact with him, which is
Now we're
awesome.
now we're in contact with it. And you know the surprising thing was, like, you go to these a lot of big conferences, even ISNA now. The chance you have with speaking with a speaker right afterwards, or easily accessible to pitch your idea, is more like, say salam and ask a question, is like a huge line. Here, alhamdulillah, every single speaker that went on stage or had some kind of talk, we were easily approachable.
Mm-hmm.
There was like 600 people total at the conference. Good amount of people, but still manageable where we could actually approach all these people. But yeah, I myself met some very interesting people, and I'm sure you guys have. We could probably speak on it if you want to. But I met somebody. He was from Myanmar. I think that's what we call it, right? Myanmar. He was a Texas guy, originally from Myanmar, and he had something called Exo Halal, which is like a halal snack box. He brought a bunch of snacks for all the speakers as a way of advertising and connecting people. He was wearing a big cowboy hat. But I saw it. He launched it just a month ago. The product is live. He said, I have multiple shipments already going out, which is pretty inspirational, amazing. He said, now I'm going to start full-on advertising.
Nice.
Like properly. But his product is done, and he's shipping. He has a customer base.
Halal snack box. Yeah.
Which is amazing. It is actually quite amazing.
And we met many people like that. So the speakers themselves, I think the speakers it shows are all successful Muslim entrepreneurs across the board. And like I said, you can approach all of them. So literally at some point, I met every single one of them at some point throughout the conference, right? It's about what, 6-7 hour day, 8 hour day. And just had a short conversation. If anything, it was like, hey man, like, thanks for the talk. Some of them was just very brief like that. Others I sat and, just had a conversation about, what they're working on. Cause sometimes it was fascinating. Actually the Faraz guy, right? I was calling him the Faraz guy. I can't remember his last name.
Faraz Khan.
Faraz Khan, yeah. Okay. And, imagine just this idea. I'm just throwing it out there because it's super cool. Manufacturing in space. It's like, wait, why the heck would you do that? Seems superfluous. It sounds fancy, but why don't you just manufacture on Earth? It's cheaper, it's easier, right? And according to him, there's certain things, because of zero gravity, pressure, so on and so forth, in some ways, right? Manufacturing materials were different. They act differently. They behave differently in space than they do on Earth with the gravity. And so you can get away with certain formulations in space that would never work.
You were saying something about shelf life, right? Or like
it was one drug. So he was talking about I'm completely forgetting the drug's name, but the idea was, he says that drug, it was a capsule with a liquid inside, but that liquid turned into a gel if it stayed on the shelf long enough. And
if it was manufactured on Earth.
Yeah. When it was manufactured on Earth, the formulation this company had that was, FDA approved, they put it out there. It's a name we've all heard of. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he says it turns into a gel long enough, and then they didn't realize it still was on the market, and they eventually had to pull it because it was ineffective. And so they created a new formulation, same exact drug, new formulation that they produce in space, manufacture in space, bring back to Earth, and it works. And technically, because of new formulation, it's not they can do it without the company's thing. But they said, hey, look, we recreated your drug. We'd like you guys can be on board, and we can re-release this drug correctly, basically, which is cool. But it's not. They really applied this to pharmaceuticals. It looks like they realized they were initially doing some other kind of stuff, like actual manufacturing of other elements and whatnot. But eventually, they're like, you know what, pharmacy is a great place to do this. So they just hired a team of pharmacists, and they started kind of trying to make certain drugs. The formulations, again, the hardest part about making these drugs is, you find the right chemical that does what you want it to do in the body or whatever, and then to actually create a formulation that can be formed into a drug that gets absorbed correctly is really hard. And now suddenly, I think space manufacturing opens up some possibilities for them. And what I liked about this, because it was just so cool. So I just sat there and talked about this for like 10 minutes with the guy. Mm-hmm.
But what's awesome. Amazing is there's a Muslim guy out there who decided the thing that he wants to pursue is space manufacturing. That is such a hard problem. And like something like, as a startup, I'm going to decide to go to space and do something. There's so many logistics, whatever it is behind it. But he did it, and that's very inspirational, where there's nothing really out of reach if you want to do it.
To be fair, I believe he invested in a company that does that. I'm not sure if that company is necessarily Muslim, but he's a VC. The cool thing was, in the conference, you had all kinds of people, right? You had noobs and novices like us who knew nothing. And then you had people who actually had some legitimate companies. And then you had people who were investors, right? And so he was one of the investor or venture capitalist class. But yeah, it was very easy to approach these guys, and they gave so much advice. Like I pitched one of my ideas to this guy, and he challenged it in all kinds of angles, right? He made me think about that idea in so many different ways, which was fascinating, right? So I can see why having some of these folks as mentors is just so valuable. And ultimately, I think that the conference achieved what it wanted to do, right? It got all these people together, connected them, and we still are in connection, like in communication with some of the people we met, like this Harvard engineer guy that we might make a product with, and so many things. And alhamdulillah, it was very good. It was very good.
You know what's interesting?
Yeah.
There's so many things to like. I took a lot of things to learn away from this. Right. One thing was, and of course, different people gave slightly different advice. Right. There were some people saying that, like the levels of FYI guy. Right. If you find it useful, what you're trying to build, and you see that it would be useful for other people, if you build it, people will come. Right. You can get there, and that's what he did. However, the young guy, the 21-year-old who sold 4 companies, he said, I don't do a startup unless I already know my distribution avenue for
Strategy,
distribution,
yeah.
right? Like, so he already has that set. He knows that this is how I'm going to distribute my product, and then he thinks the product is worth developing, right?
So he finds the market first. The idea is this: you find the market first, the market and distribution first, which is opposite, because what we do is like, okay, we all try to find a need. We all try to do the market, right? We all do this market research. We're like, okay, here's the problem I have, and there's many books and stuff about this too. But it's like, okay, so the first thing you do is you find a problem. Okay, it's a problem. Let's say you faced, right? I'd like to take my trash out, which is one of the ideas an old gentleman proposed. But I want to take my trash out. Let's see if we can automate that. That'd be nice, right? And then you see, do other people have the same problem? If yes, do enough people have that? Okay, is there a viable solution? And then how would you distribute it, right? So once you know there's a problem, the next thing is distribution. I'm assuming he solved first. Which is a great way to do it, because what you don't want to do is perfect this product, spend hours and days and months and years even perfecting a product, and then you realize, okay, now how can you possibly market this, as useful as it may be?
It's all about finding product market fit too, right? And so if you have a willing customer base to begin with,
And
let's
you
say
can
you have a
reach
wait
them. You
list,
reach them.
you can instantly reach them. And you can just launch your product by literally clicking email everyone that we've launched the product. It's really useful. So those distribution channels are important. But going to takeaways, another important thing that I think we all learned was that none of these companies have any real competitive advantage, or like they're not really defensible. There's no moat, right? Yeah. And we can attack any idea and compete. And you don't even have to be the better product necessarily. You just have to be better at distributing or selling, essentially.
Or just not overall be better, just be an alternative, right?
Or a
you
niche,
have
subset.
Some niche that the other product doesn't really cater to, so you go that way. And Rocket Money is a great example, right? Because Mint was dominating that market and other apps, right? Truebill, which is before Rocket Money, they decided that, oh, you know what we're gonna do? We are going to target subscriptions specifically. We'll let you know how many subscriptions you have, so you're aware of them. It's easily cancelable, and also if we think we could lower your price of your subscription, we'll do that for you. And that was the niche that they filled. And turns out that niche was big enough, and then they actually found out how to actually sell their product in the correct way, that they were able to close out Mint. But again,
they realized the market was big enough
they
themselves became a subscription.
They're still not they're still not actually, again, a moat. Somebody else could come and overthrow them.
Yes.
But what we learned was the moat should not be what stops you from implementing an idea. There is absolutely no problem. If you think your idea is unique and good enough, and there is a need in the market,
you can capture a part of the market.
There's a case study about this. I'm not sure
There's
it's a case study, but there's one really, it's like a famous thing I heard. You know when Hydro Flask became super popular, right? Everyone's carrying on the Hydro Flask water container, that little dude with the sun head, whatever.
And Stanley Cup came out.
That was later, but that was some kind of viral trend. But the point is, it was the first really high quality kind of glass vacuum sealed cup. Okay, the Hydro Flask became really popular. Apparently the same idea, it was these two owners that thought about the same time. I don't know what the relationship was, but these two people, they split off. One made Hydro Flask, the other one made Clean Canteen. You've probably seen Clean Canteen as well. Hydro Flask took off because of marketing. Same exact product. Same exact product.
You mean marketing?
Marketing, yeah.
Yeah.
Marketing was the difference.
Yeah.
It was the same exact product. Literally same exact product.
Mhm.
There's only so many ways you can make a vacuum sealed, container
Mm.
for liquids. Same exact product. One just took off, probably made hundreds of millions of dollars, my guess, at least, if not more. And the other one probably a lot less. Again, no moat, no nothing. Just go out, get your brand out there, and everyone just the hype.
Mm.
Yeah, but the idea is a lot of these are attackable. That's the main thing, right? You could get into the market, and even if you have a brand new idea and you're thinking, "How will I defend this?" Don't worry about that. That's the main takeaway. It's not about just attacking. It's about if I have a new idea, oh, somebody else could do that too. I don't have a patent or something that's like really proprietary. That doesn't matter. Go out there, make it. You will find a market for yourself. Even if it gets cut down a little bit, it's still going to produce you money, right? I think that's what was the takeaway. And honestly, the main takeaway from all this was it was inspirational. I left at a very high of building something, and alhamdulillah, we did build something, and it's out.
Almost.
Okay.
Actually, it's out. We just need to change
It's almost out.
we need to take the stripe codes so that it's actually going to
It's
production.
almost out.
It's basically, inshallah, next podcast it'll be out, and then we'll talk to you guys about it.
We say that every day.
But you know what else I came up with? Like, I came out with the motivation for building and entrepreneurship and all that kind of stuff. That entrepreneurial spirit, basically. But on top of that, I did come out with a slight Iman high. It was very good. And I would say, and I give credit to him. I'm totally forgetting his name, but the man who created Truebill, it was him and his three brothers, his four brothers who created this product. And, he talks about, and I'm going to mention it here because it's super important, where he talks about tawakkul Allah, because he said he tried to sell the company at 8 million, but he was only offered 6 million. So they're like, no, we can do better. So they kept the company going. 6 months to a year later, they got another offer. And then they're like, oh, no, I think we're better than that now. And then they went to this company called Rabbit, can't remember what it was, but some VC company that buys out. They're like, hey, why don't you buy us? They're like, oh, no, I think you guys have hit a peak. We can't grow your company anymore. We can't buy it, grow you, sell you, because you've already peaked. And then they got even better. And then months later, they said, hey, why don't you buy us now? They're like, no, now you've really peaked. They did this 5 times. And at the end, while him and 3 of the brothers went for Hajj with their father, one brother stayed behind. And while he was there, he says, I finished Hajj. I went to Medina, prayed, visited the grave of the Prophet Muhammad. And as I was sitting there underneath, those umbrellas they have, he's like, I finally checked my email for the first time since I left for Hajj. And I got a contract to sign for $1.3 billion to sell the company cash.
On the top of the market.
Yeah, to Rocket. So,
and surprisingly, the other thing he pointed out was that same year, all the money finance apps dropped.
Yeah.
90% value.
And it was a cash deal. Normally, when you get bought out like this, they give you stock in the parent company, right?
Yeah.
So the company that's buying you out gives you partial cash, partial stock. In this case, they said, look, we're going to give you a full cash buyout. You don't get any stock. He's like, okay, sure. Money's fine. And then literally within a month, all similar type companies all crashed.
90%.
Up to 95%. It's insane.
Yeah, that's insane.
So that's tawakkul. And then the one last thing he mentioned was a little tidbit. He's like even if you rewind, because this whole thing from beginning to end of this company was 4 years. But he said in the first year, we developed the entire product. It was ready, set, go. He said it was on a single server in our space.
Yeah.
And I think he was backed by YC as well. So he had a Y Combinator space and all this stuff. So he said we had a single server, single hard drive that ran everything we created. It messed up. We got an alert, things aren't working. We went, we checked it out. They tried to do all the troubleshooting they could. It didn't work. They got Dell, I guess it was a Dell server PC on phone. They couldn't figure out. At the end, the Dell guy's like, look, you know what? This is a last ditch effort, attempt thing. I don't know. You know what? Just take the hard drive out, take the cable of the hard drive, go, like the old SNES, NES, cartridges.
Yeah.
Put it back in, take it out, put it back in. They said that's exactly what they did. He said, we took out the hard drive, blew on the cable, blew on the hard drive, snapped it back together. Everything was there. And he noticed, look, it worked, right? Everything worked after that. But he's like, a speck of dust was the difference between the company basically collapsing because that was everything that worked on over a year and they can't refund that. And not. So it just shows that at the end of the day, no matter how good you are, obviously a brilliant man, no matter how good you are, no matter how good your team is, no matter how right you're doing things, everything's in the hands of Allah, and we say alhamdulillah for what we have. Because there's no doubt, and I'll tie this back a little bit, because people talk about, you meet all these super rich people who are like, oh, this is all my own effort. I worked hard and I'm reaping the reward. I bet you, for every man who's worked hard and was successful, there are hundreds of people who worked just as hard, maybe even harder, and were unsuccessful and maybe in piles of debt. Who knows, right? So it's just worth noting that we say, alhamdulillah for what we have. Rizq in Allah's hand. It's not like we don't try. We're builders. We try. We're going to hopefully make it one day, but
Yeah, Allah can stop your whole plan with a speck of dust, essentially.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But the beautiful thing is, like, right now is the time. If anybody's listening, right now is the time that you could build a startup in a week. Right? If you spend a week on a solid week, you're not distracted, you could probably build a full startup in a week, launch it, and then start improving on it. But it is very possible that the Prep Haven person that we talked to, who's our direct competitor, because we're making also a test-taking website, and we looked at Prep Haven, and they're doing the what's it called?
IELTS exam.
IELTS
It's like
exams,
an
right?
English exam.
So they built this AI-built exam taker, right? And we went to it, and that was like, okay, this company's already done it with AI. We will do it with different tests, and we can compete in that. Not necessarily the same market, but the same idea, right? Turns out that Prep Haven guy was there. He had built it in 2 weeks.
6 weeks.
6 weeks, sorry.
6 weeks.
6 weeks over the summer. He had 2 engineers to do it. He built the whole thing in 6 weeks, launched it, and started making, has some customers at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Like, you could do it. You could just have an idea, use AI to quickly generate the MVP, probably need an engineer to really take it to the final stage.
Yeah, but you can get
very far
with the English language. I don't know how to code, but just with English now, I can get a significant part of the mockup done or iterate and make new features. Sure, it'll need some refinement and stuff. You'll need an engineer, of course. But you can get a significant part of the way just by English.
Yeah, so the thing is, like, me and him are doing this together, but I'm the software engineer. He's not. However, it's not that he's not on the code base, right? He's actually made some of the APIs and the prompts and perfected that. He's also made the initial UI was all built by him. Yeah, it was refined and upgraded, but we had a working product only made by him that had some bugs. But
And
then,
I don't know how to code at all.
yeah, but then after that, you have an engineer who can take it to that next level and complete it, right? And so if you're out there thinking that, oh, I really need an engineer day one, you probably don't. You probably can get an MVP out, have a proof of concept, and then get an engineer on who's motivated, seeing what you've built, seeing the idea, and then they could probably help you take it to that next level.
And for those who know, MVP is a minimum viable product. Right?
Yeah.
The cool thing is now that I never thought about a lot of ideas when it comes to like having startups or businesses or whatever. Lately, I've had a lot of ideas because now I feel like the world has opened itself to me. Because previously I couldn't code or do anything on that front, and I knew like any such idea would require a lot of effort, things that I can't do. But now I feel like I'm very close to making anything if I want, right? So now I'm looking at opportunities. Now that I have the knowledge that I have these potential skills or access to these things, everywhere I see opportunity. Always. There's things that come up, and then now we just have like a board that we just log ideas. Like things come up on our mind, you just log an idea. And like,
But with AI, it's not just that you have no coders who are able to create MVPs and create, like, you know, software products or any kind of idea really, but also people who can code. I can move way faster.
10x.
Way faster. I know exactly what I want, and I can get the AI to make those changes. That would take me significantly more amount of time digging through the code, making it here or there. But since I know exactly the edits I want, I could relay those changes that I want to the AI, and that AI is able to edit those files very quickly. And I can iterate that way. The way I iterate is I tell the AI to iterate, but the difference between me and no coder is I kind of know what I want out of it, and so I can get it done faster. But either way, if you're no coder or a coder, this is probably the time you could push out products very,
There's such
very fast.
low-hanging fruit. It's one of those things. There was a couple of tech booms, right? There was a .com boom. Then there was the app boom, the mobile app boom. Then there was
People
kind of
made money with flashlight apps.
yeah, exactly.
Tons of money.
And then there was
Tons of money.
kind of Web3, not Web3, sorry, the kind of meta
Cloud.
VR, cloud stuff. And now this is the fourth boom, basically.
Social media.
And
cloud.
this one, the nice thing about this boom is all those booms required engineering knowledge, computer science, engineering, something like that. This one doesn't even require that.
And it's applicable to a lot more spaces, right? Anywhere
To a
there's
degree, I
knowledge
should say
work,
to a degree, but
anywhere there's knowledge work involved, this can theoretically replace it. And now through robotics, it can replace manual labor too.
Interestingly, so
It's huge.
the one of the young guy, his first company was called Musicfly
music
or
five.
Musicfy,
For us, yeah.
and what he is no, not for us, the younger kid.
Okay.
And so what he essentially discovered as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, he was just going on the internet. He found this API made by some foreign country. It was publicly available that allowed you to do voice change, right? You could select somebody's voice, feed it into it, like Drake, and it will change your voice, whatever, to Drake's voice, right? And that's it. He used a free open source API and said that I will make a product around it, wrap it in a nice package, and then sell it. He did none of the code. Like he said, the real basis of what the whole product is was a free open source API. He just took it, packaged nicely, and monetized
Which is
it.
why I'm saying it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily require a lot of intelligence. It just requires you to have the
See opportunity.
inspiration to really see the opportunity and capitalize on it.
Yeah, he said it was a Chinese GitHub repo. The whole thing was in Chinese. There was a couple people who were like, "Hey, this is kind of cool," and then he just took it and flew with it. Right, that's all it took.
He monetized it,
Yeah.
right? He monetized something that is free.
Yeah,
And so there's actually a lot of APIs and stuff out there that if you were to use it in a particular way that's unique and has not been done before, or nobody's monetized it yet, you could be the first.
100%. Anyway, I think there's a lot of low hanging fruit. I think it's easy to get into this game if you're a Muslim for sure, or any of our audience for that matter. Become a builder, as call it, right? Have the entrepreneurial spirit, make something, sell it, and hopefully improve the broader Muslim community through it. Moving on, though, there's a couple other interesting topics that happened. This is news-wise. I think we talk a lot about news and politics here, but this is some interesting stuff. One, let's talk about Trump, and then we'll talk about kind of the hostages that were released. So, firstly, Trump recently sanctioned South Africa. It was basically he pulled back some funding from them that they normally give because apparently it was because of their UN allegations towards Israel that Israel is a genocidal state, basically, right? That they're committing a genocide, a plausible genocide, I think it was the verbiage. So, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just is exactly what it is, right? It's not America first. It never like Trump's. I feel like the people who were really, there's two types of Trump supporters, right? There's one Trump supporter who were saying that, hey, we want America. They both want America first, but thought they, Trump's gonna get it done this time, right? First one was a pretty good trial run for 4 years. This time, he's really speaking hard on making sure America first, everything prioritizing Americans, ending, keeping the jobs in America for Americans, all this stuff, right? And then you come to election day, you come to all the events, and then all you see is American flag right next to Israeli flag. Okay, well that's and then a lot of those supporters were like, we want to do away with any kind of politicians who have dual nationality. We don't care what it is. We're not biased one way or the other. We don't want dual nationality out there. We just don't want that, right? And Trump seemed to be their guy to do this, but he didn't. His entire cabinet picks, right? They were Zionists, right? They were all neocons, Zionists, hardcore, and one after the other. Bigger and bigger and bigger. There's like super. His cabinets last time were less compared to this time, right? This time, and so people saw the shock right away. And so, of course, when you see that he's surrounding himself with Zionists, his son-in-law Kushner is a major Zionist. It makes sense that the policies that we see right now that are coming out back to back are extremely pro-Zionist, pro-Israel, right? Sanctioning
South African
South
stuff.
Africa. And then completing the task that was at hand for Gaza, right? This makes it a lot nicer. This is a lot more acceptable that a third party takes control of Gaza rather than the one who bombed it to or leveled it completely, right? If Israel came and took over Gaza, they could be a huge backlash, right? America's a backlash, everybody would backlash, like, hey, what's happening? Now America's like coming in as a sort of good guy. It was weird because Trump's like, initially he spoke saying that, we feel bad for the Palestinians. They've been through a lot, this and that.
That was a very interesting press conference because I think it
Yeah.
was Netanyahu and Trump, standing there at the podium, and Trump was speaking. You could see Netanyahu's expressions, and it looked like everything Trump said about what you're saying, basically, where America becomes they take over Gaza.
They
The
take
United
over.
States takes over Gaza, and what that means though is all the Palestinians leave. That's part of this. America takes over Gaza, makes it all pretty again,
But the way he
and
started
all the
his speech was
Gazans
interesting,
leave.
right? Because if you just listen to the first 2 minutes or 3 minutes of it, you're like, okay, it seems like he's sympathizing with the Gazans, right? He's saying they've been through a lot, been through hell, and they were bombed, right? Like he's almost pointing fingers at Netanyahu, saying that these people were bombed. He never said Israel. He never said Palestinians directly. He was just saying the people.
And he's saying that the people have suffered, the people have lived in poor living conditions. He never blamed anybody, but he said, "Look, this is the situation, and it's obvious who, but he never said who."
He never said who.
Yeah, which is interesting. But yeah.
And then start feeling good. Okay, maybe he's, at least he's somewhat sympathetic. And then he moves on to the next part, which is the actual plan, which is to take over Gaza completely. And some news reporter asked him, you're going to take over a sovereign nation. They said, yeah, we've agreed to do it. A lot of other countries are on board, right? And they're okay with it. And we're going to take it. And there's no actual end date. Mm-hmm. We don't know how long we're going to take over Gaza. But we're going to take over. And what are they going to do with it? Are they going to rebuild people's homes? That's a priority? No. He immediately said they're going to make a Riviera. They're going to make nice beachfront property.
Yeah. It's going to be beautiful. They're going to make construction that'll be beautiful, worth living in for who? Probably Israelis. Because all the Gazans have left at that point.
So. No, well, even then, like if I really think about like the most optimistic way, and if I really think he's gonna bring the Gazans back, okay, he brings the Gazans back, but who's gonna be working in those hotels and casinos, right? All those places. Who's gonna be staffing them, running the business? Who's gonna be the owners of the business? It's not gonna be the Gazans. Do you think they have like expertise in this field? No, they're gonna have a bunch of other people living there, running these mega businesses. And maybe have some low-hanging jobs, potentially, if everything works out, that the Gazans come back for them, right? I don't see how any of this is for the Gaza people.
I think it's important to remember, though, that the way Trump works is a shock and awe kind of thing, right? He'll say things, he'll throw things out there, especially if there's like a stalemate, there's not much of a solution. He'll say things, they'll get a discussion going forward, right? Canada will be our 51st state. Greenland, this, that. Everybody's like, what on earth is he talking about? But then it gets some conversations going. With the Gaza thing, you can argue there's been a bit of a stalemate, right? It's like, you guys aren't proposing any good solutions, so here's my thing. The U.S. will take over Gaza. Yeah. And I feel Netanyahu was taken a little by surprise when it comes to this thing, because that's not exactly what he was wanting or expecting, because what's happening now, effectively, is, sure, the problematic statements he's making is that we're going to have to remove the Gazans, right? But at the same time, he's also not committing to having U.S. soldiers there necessarily. But they can come if the region is kind of attacked, which also implies that Israel cannot attack the region anymore. Yeah. Because it'll be now U.S. territory. So it kind of, sort of, semi-protects that area. It's kind of weird. At the same time, what it's done is it has shown what the real face of Saudi and other places might be. The reason I say this is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia just released a statement through its foreign ministry stating that, in very strong terms, that they disagree with this whole idea. That they called it
removing the Gazans.
Removing Gazans, they disagreed with it, and they called it ethnic cleansing, that they've already been subject to ethnic cleansing, which is strong terms coming from Saudi. I mean, this is not normal. So what he's done is he's at least moved the conversation forward in some way. Now, whether or not he actually executes this is debatable, because honestly, he does not want U.S. soldiers there. Nobody wants U.S. soldiers in Gaza. And how else will he get the Gazans out of Gaza? They're not leaving. They're going back, okay?
Yeah.
Because think about it. If ethnic cleansing really was his goal, why wouldn't he just coerce Egypt and Jordan to open the gates?
And then they can just push them, herd them through.
While they're getting bombed. It makes no sense to first call for a ceasefire, let the Gazans all come back, and now say, hey, open the gates, let them move. Now it's even harder. So it's not a clear-cut strategy. It's not very clear.
It's not very clear if it's complete. Look, to me, overall...
There's more, basically.
Look.
It's like he thought this up on the top of his head.
I think basically they plan Allah plans. And so, to me, it's like I always try to see I see that the broader picture, maybe what is the negative, right? I see like, okay, this could be a problem. But at the same time, I say, what could be the optimistic outcome of all this? Maybe they don't even expect, right? Maybe what happens is, this is optimism now, that Trump comes in. First of all, first thing happens is now if Israel attacks, it's an attack on U.S. because U.S. controls that territory. So there's peace in that region. Whether the Gazans, of course, they're not going to remove every single one of them, right? It's almost impossible. The amount of people there, who's going to take that much people? Mm-hmm. So most likely, all people won't leave there. There'll still be some people left. The people who
aren't leaving.
The people who are giving the opportunity and they choose to take it, maybe some of them will leave, but the rest will probably be still there. They'll probably rebuild. And ultimately, if they build all these facilities, build all these jobs and opportunities, and hopefully, this is optimism speaking, is that Gazans can take over this development, essentially take it for themselves, right? Benefit from it in some way.
Allah A'lam. I mean, ultimately, any of these policies, they need U.S. boots on the ground to enforce it, and that's not going to happen. So it's kind of just throwing everyone off. But it also means now, Israel, you can no longer attack Gaza because we kind of own it or something. It is.
I've heard this solution before. Actually, the first time I heard it, at least fleshed out, was when I was hearing a clip from Jon Stewart. But he said something like this. So basically, he said, look, clearly these two can't get along. The Gazans and the Israelis, there's not going to be
Palestinians.
peace. The Palestinians, right? Because that includes the West Bank for that matter. But point is, he's like, if you leave them to their own devices, one has a lot more power, they'll wipe out the other, and that'll be the end of it. Basically, if there's no outside interference, the Palestinians would cease to exist tomorrow. If you turn off all the cameras and everyone just turns a blind eye for for 1 month, Israel will own the whole area, for sure. That's not a question, that's fact. So now he's like, well, the only way you can do this is you get a third party, a trusted third party. It could be a group of nations even. It could be maybe a combination of Egypt, Saudi, America, maybe some Western powers who come, and they're the ones who monitor the border. Not Israel, not anyone who necessarily has an agenda against. Maybe South Africa will be part of this, right? Some people who are like, obviously like, look, we just don't want injustice. And I think that the idea could work. So America could be that third party. Now, America's foreign policy history and wars and stuff, whether it's Iraq, Vietnam, whatever.
Their control is Zionists. That's the problem. That's the underlying problem.
That's another thing, but it still could be better. Yeah. It still could be better because now, again, there's this whole thing with the USS Liberty, whatever. But the point is, there's no doubt that if there is even one American soldier standing at the border between Gaza and Israel, and something happens to him, that's going to be a big deal. It's going to be a big deal. So there's no doubt where I do think America coming in and taking over Gaza, at least, they're the ones who are providing security or whatever, is probably a step in the right direction because America, as Zionist as it is not Israel. So
it is a bad step though because, well, so long as what he's saying is what he really wants to do, that he wants to remove all the Gazans out of there, that's ethnic cleansing.
Yeah. Of course,
at its finest.
I agree, but if there's going to be
a problem,
but it's better. I mean, because right now, what's going to happen? Either Israel takes over. I mean, at this point, what's going to happen?
At this point, what's happened is all the Palestinians have come back to their broken homes, but they're coming back. Yeah, but so whatever Israel tried to achieve has been reversed.
Yeah, but I believe, even though there's a ceasefire, they're not fighting anymore. But the IDF still has a presence in Gaza.
Well, not exactly in North Gaza. They've withdrawn. And the people of Gaza who flew to the south have all come back to a lot of them are coming back to the north at least. They're coming back. So that old territory they're having to give back, they gave back. And you can see Hamas now with their flags and they come out of nowhere and they've recruited a lot.
I'm just talking about America being the third party is slightly better than Israel being
the deep down, this is what I say.
America was already the third
ultimately,
party.
Ultimately, what it actually is happening.
It's just providing 2,000-pound bombs to Israel.
Is that whether it's America, Israel, maybe they're maneuvering this so that they can get public sentiment better, right? Muslims are kind of confused. It was a good thing or a bad thing, right? But who's behind Trump? There's a lot of people behind Trump, a lot of Zionists. Jared Kushner is a real estate guy. 2030 was Jared Kushner's plan with all these Gulf countries. That's how they formulated it, right? The Abrahamic Accords. Plus, this Riviera, you could bet Jared Kushner is involved in building his real estate.
100%
in Gaza, right?
But again, as we mentioned last time, though, there's no wrong in saying that the good things Trump did bring a ceasefire, right? Trump did whoever the guy was, the main negotiator that he sent, was a guy who was willing to actually talk to Hamas. Because before they'd be like, you can't negotiate with terrorists, Hamas is terrorists, so you just never negotiate with one side. That way negotiations will never happen. But he's like, look, we'll talk to Hamas. Of course we will. If they're willing to talk, we're willing to talk. Why not? You can't have peace without talking.
Yeah.
So
But
good steps were taken. Now this whole making the Gazans leave for another day, on a separate note, I think that should have happened maybe a long time ago on a humanitarian side of things. But now that there's a ceasefire, it doesn't make much sense.
Well, ultimately, it goes back to the idea that Trump has demonstrated again and again that he controls the board. Okay, with the ceasefire initiation, with this whole suggestion that he might take over Gaza, all these things just accelerated the conversation. Okay, this is some wacko idea, but how do we deal with it? Do we have a better solution? So everybody's now taking stances amongst us to like, okay, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Everybody's like on their toes. Ultimately, it shows that he controls, even for Netanyahu in Israel. It's like, yes, the U.S. still controls the whole game, right? Even with the ceasefire thing, instantly. It doesn't matter if you're Sabbath or whatever. My envoy is going to go get it done. It's done.
Yeah.
Okay? So he's on, they're on their toes.
He's a doer, so I'll give him some credit. Again, there's obviously major Zionist tones here. We've seen his cabinet picks and everything. It's not looking great. But there's one thing I like about Trump in general. He says things, and he does try to execute. And for better or worse, hopefully for better, I think that's good.
Look, all I know is, what I feel is at least, Trump does offer some resistance to the establishment, right? So the establishment wants something, right? During the Biden administration, I'm pretty sure they got whatever they wanted. There was not much resistance, right? With Trump being such a strong-headed person,
unpredictable, too.
and unpredictable, there's gonna be a little bit of give and take. It's not gonna be a smooth operation. Not like everything they want they're gonna get, right? Suddenly they're gonna constantly have to deal with Trump, right? And so along the way, the things that happen that may not like 100%, and that's because of the way Trump is.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's what we see. And you're right. Like, at least, look, whatever the wall is for Mexico, whether it's actually useful or not, I'm for controlling the border, but how good the wall is and how well it works, but at least he implemented it.
Well, the coolest thing I've been following has been Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency. They have a Twitter handle, of course they do, X handle, and they post almost every day about different kind of things that they have been doing to save money. It's like from NIH grant modifications to like taking out random DEI stuff here and there. They're saving tons of money. So they've noted over the past few days since they've been operating, they've been saving roughly $1 billion every day for the government, like an annual expenditure.
If we can at least end the deficit, that would be insane. Because I think the last president to actually have a surplus was Clinton. Clinton had a surplus.
Clinton had a surplus
for the state budget.
Yeah, we talked about it. Remember, back in the election time. But yeah, now he's saying the goal is to go from 1 billion savings a day to $3 billion savings a day, and that'll be really, really good. And you can just follow it. It's all on X. It's great. It's like there was some, and people. It's like almost like crowd-sourced information. Like people on Twitter posting, "Hey, why is the government paying the New York Times? Why do we pay the New York Times? Why do we pay Washington Post? I'll look into it or something." And then suddenly Doge posts, "We have confirmed today that the government has canceled the subscription for New York Times. Confirmed that they have canceled this subscription, that thing, this, that." And it's just, they're just executing, which is great.
Honestly, it's a good thing. Actually, I personally am not a huge fan of Musk, but Doge, the idea behind Doge, and the fact that, love him or hate him, Elon Musk is an excellent CEO. He's taken companies and brought them all to success, including X for what it's worth. Whether he had to sell his soul to do it or not is a separate question, but he made it a success, and so I'm confident that Doge will be a success.
It's already doing pretty well.
So that's pretty cool. Bringing us to kind of finally these current affairs news topic I want to talk about is most recently Hamas released 3 more hostages. Men this time, because previously, again, there might have been more in the middle. I haven't been watching every hostage release, but this one became on the news because previously when they released the groups of women, Like the 4 women they did like maybe 2-3 weeks ago, they look quite healthy. You know, they pretty much looked more or less the way they came in. They were all kind of smiling. Everything was looking pretty good as far as their health, um, physical health. But these three men, I mean, if you look before and after pictures, they have lost a significant amount of weight. Significant, meaning like these people would look very thin, very thin. Some of them look like what's the guys from Ratatouille, the food critic, but yeah, like very like gaunt almost.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and then the news headlines are, of course, Hamas was starving them, yada yada yada. It's like, okay, look, wait. And I said, hold up. In general, and this was on October 7th, I think on October 7th or October 8th, it was it Gant or whoever, we pretty much said, yeah, we're going to stop all food, all water, all everything to Gaza. And it's been stopped since that day. So the entire Palestinian population in Gaza was starving. That's a fact. The fact that those women, hostages, came out looking plump even, I would say, like quite healthy, I was like, wow. They did as fine a job as they possibly could have, considering what the food situation there is. And then you see these men, which is a complete opposite. Now, it could be that these people were kept in different places. As we know, the hostages were all over the place. It's not like all 100, 200 hostages were kept in a single area. They're spread around. Certain families took care of them. And I know some of the ladies were saying that, oh, in the house we were staying at, the reason I came out with braids is there was a lady who would braid her hair every day. Just one of the old, she was the grandmother, whatever.
I think they were kept probably with different people. But I would say it could also just be professional treatment. Preferential treatment, right? Maybe the women were just treated better than the men.
I could see that. Women, children, the elderly being given priority when it comes to food and such, and these young men, obviously relatively young men, these guys must have been around 40s plus. I don't know, something like that. Some of them look around 40 or even older. It's like, okay, so I can see why. I mean, I can see the same thing. I'm just saying, if me and my family was starving, I mean, this is my family, of course, but it goes for anybody. If me and some young woman was starving, I'd make sure she gets priority to some degree, right?
Yeah, I mean, there could be that going on. Oh, of course. You never want to see that, right? Islamically, you want to treat them as well as you're treated. And they might have been, right? They might have themselves been starting. We don't know.
We can't even see the Hamas soldiers, by the way. We don't know. All the Hamas are all fully whatever, but I mean, I'm sure
you know that the leader, what's his name? Ubaidullah? He looks a lot less, he looks thinner than he started. He was a pretty plump guy from his initial pictures, and now he looks...
I mean, you talk to all of them. I think
skinnier.
Some of the people we talked to most who went to Gaza over this past year and a half are the doctors, the surgeons and doctors who went, kind of stayed there for some months and came back. One of them recently, he had a great reception when he came back to the airport in the UK. He was a neurosurgeon. But they talk about the food they have there. Basically, they get there and they get a can or two of food per day. That's it. They get these 2 cans. That's your meal. And this happens once or twice a day. And that's it. And sometimes, like, they open it, the cans are messed up. There was, they weren't properly canned or whatever. A lot of them had terrible diarrhea after eating, get food poisoning from eating this canned food and stuff.
Your net loss from eating.
Yeah, now you're dehydrated, and water's already, And these are obviously these people, the doctors who come over. I'm sure they get some preferential treatment for food and stuff, is my guess. And they're getting 2-3 cans of food a day. Nothing crazy, right? So imagine the Gazan who was trying to flee North Gaza. You think he's going to have much food? And so I think, look, the whole nation was starved, and so if you're seeing the hostages have lost weight, I think it's just par for the course.
I would say it's hypocritical considering the people that the Israeli released. They all look terrible. Mm-hmm. There was not a single one that did not look terrible.
Yeah, they all look pretty.
They all look really terrible.
That doesn't make the news.
But also that doesn't make the news. But the other thing is, like, I always find there's like many things that like are skipped, right? Initially, October 7th. They had huge claims of mass rapes and beheading babies, right? Yeah. And both of which were debunked by pretty much every single news outlet.
Pretty rapidly too.
But now even Ben Shapiro himself has somewhat at least said it once that this is not true. Of course, he probably blames other things on it. That's one thing. So like this is very important to understand, right? That there's huge claims made by Israel and its supporters, and all of them turned out to be false. Now, another claim that they claimed since day one is that, and it's essentially it's a moral claim. These Gazans, these Palestinians, this Hamas, they're not moral at all. So, of course, they raped the hostage women, right? Of course, like, they basically made it like it has zero evidence, but they made it as if it's like an obvious statement that, of course, they're raped. Mm-hmm. Of course, they're going to come back and they'll be sexually abused by the time they come back, right? However, they're completely silent. If they were, it would be all over the headlines. They would be witnessed. They would probably put microphones on each of their faces, make them publicly state how bad it was there, how badly they were, all the times they were sexually abused, how often, all this stuff. Nothing, absolutely nothing. But the claims were rampant for the whole time these hostages were there. Pretty much like, and all these newscasters, reporters, they took it as like obvious fact that they're going to be raped.
Which is crazy to imagine. In the 6-hour stint or whatever, however long the raid was, where they had to go, attack, and come back. Primarily, most of the targets were actually military targets when Hamas came in, for what it's worth. It's worth noting that. They went and they mass raped and came back. Crazy. Which was all found false. And then you get these hostages come out. And the worst claim the hostages have is he raped me with his eyes, basically. Where every day he just looked at me. And I would always, this is literally the worst claim that happens. One of the hostages, like every day he looked at me. And I was just waiting for the rape to happen. And the wait for the rape was so bad. I was just rape me already. So something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but basically that's what she said. Which is, I mean, okay, I'm not saying, obviously, these hostages, no matter how well they were treated, being a hostage is psychological trauma.
Yeah,
one day you're with your family, next day for a year, 450, 60 days.
You don't know when you're going back.
Yeah, they don't know when they're coming back. They're living with these people. No matter how well they're treated, they could be smiling and being fed and treated like a king even.
They might not even know the situation of other people who might have been taken as hostages, or other people who are maybe at that concert, whatever it was.
Or just October 7th itself would have been traumatizing for these people psychologically, let alone the year they were probably on the run. Every time there's a bombardment. I mean, just like all the Israelis say, look, we deal with these sirens and having to go inside bunkers all the time, right? It's annoying. It is a little traumatizing, I'm sure. And imagine doing that, but running from house to house and this, that, the other for a year.
In Gaza,
and so,
where your own people are bombing you.
Yeah. So look, there's no doubt these people are going to come back with psychological trauma. That's a fact.
Yeah.
I would say across the board, some degree. It could be 1%, it could be 100%. I don't know. They're going to come back with psychological trauma no matter how well they appear physically. That's a fact. But if these people were raping people with the 6-hour, raid they had, and not a single hostage comes back claiming that they were actually raped. The worst they have is he raped me with his eyes. It shows that not only how false those accusations were, these people had 450 days to rape these young women. They could have. They didn't. And that shows that obviously this was not a group of savages, immoral, whatever.
That's what you want you to believe. But on the other hand, we know that Israel did rape. They were prisoners.
Yeah.
In fact, they fought for the right to rape them. So
insane.
It's projection.
It's literally projection. It's like, oh my God, they must be raping because, well, we'd rape them.
Yeah, we would rape them.
So they must be raping us.
I think it's the same thing.
Crazy.
You ask a lot of these, I talked to the talk show hosts with the Israeli Zionist people and other people. Right now, recently, the same guy who he was paraded around all the Israeli talk shows as a hero, the guy who actually raped one of the prisoners, that one IDF soldier, right? Right now, recently, he came on my news feed, and he kind of made a statement that if I could, right now, I would wipe everybody in Gaza off the face of this planet, right? All this wipe. The thing is, they all believe this. No, I should never say all, because actually, majority of even Israeli citizens
would
are
push that button.
anti-Netanyahu.
Yeah, but there was a majority of Israeli citizens would push that button.
Yeah, but
they did this. Majority of Israeli citizens would push the button.
But they would push the button. So the thing is, this is projection. If you feel you would do a certain thing, why would you not feel that the people that you hate so much will do the same to you?
That's true. Yeah.
But it's not like
that's false, though.
But it's false. It's a false equivalence, right? Like, why would they carry your same morality? They don't, right? And that's just the wrong way to believe. People don't have the same morality as each other, right?
And actually, the biggest shocker for me on this note, it was just something that personally shocked me, because I really thought for a long time that this was a governmental push. This was a strong Zionism push. And I'm sure there is a large minority, this was in my mind, that really is hardcore Zionist and wants nothing good for the Palestinians. But then when I started watching the TikTok and shorts of that, the young man you guys met in the Bay, he has a curly hair. And he's doing like Omegle, basically. He's just interviewing these random people from Israel and stuff. And even young girls, these must be like in their teens, young teenage girls. He would ask them like, "Hey, what do you think of Gaza?" And they would be like, "Yeah, you know," they'd flip them off and say, "F them all." And then he'd be like,
it was
"Yeah,
pretty
we'd
bad.
kill them all if we could," type thing. And this is not one. This is a recurring theme. And these are random people he happens to run into on this like webcam, kind of chat thing. And that's when the first time. And then of course there's been polls that came out that show, yeah, most Israeli people, most citizens of Israel, would wipe out Gaza if they could, just to end it once and for all, regardless of the cost, right? Which also shows why it's like, you would think that with time, I say this like I think Zionist America, meaning the influence that Zionists have in America, is going down. I believe as this next generation, Gen Z, even I would say millennials, as they're growing,
Their lies are being exposed.
yeah, the lies are being exposed. But I think in Israel, it might be either similar or opposite, where I think this young generation is being fed this propaganda, or they're going through it with sirens go off and stuff. Obviously, there's been a constant war since their birth, basically, and they're like, yeah, man, let's just get rid of the problem. Forget the cost of human life. Maybe they know someone who died even on the Israeli side, right? And they're like, forget this, dude. Like, let's end this problem. And so that conflict is not going to be resolved with the birth of the next generation. That's for sure, especially after this war.
And ultimately, Islamic viewpoint, right? We don't consider this life our life, right? This life is not
It's temporary.
the life, right? So I'm not thinking that, okay, you know what, this is a huge problem. What are my moral qualms? If I get rid of it, I'll enjoy the rest of my life, right? Because I know this is not the rest of my life. My actual life starts after I die. So me taking that gray or even morally bad thing just to make my current life easy, good Muslims wouldn't do that, right? Because we know that the real life starts in the hereafter. However, if anybody, and the Quran states this very specifically for Bani Israel, that they cling to this life the most, right? And it makes sense if you're the type of person who clings to this life the most, and you're not really thinking about the hereafter. Well, you have one life to live.
YOLO.
Your neighbors are bothering you, and they're stopping you from your goals and stopping you from building the Riviera that you might want, and occupying Gaza or getting it the greater Israel, which everybody's like has patches on their shoulders of greater Israel, right? Okay, these people are clearly stopping you from doing it. Whatever your moral qualms on, it will be easier if they just wipe them off, right?
Yeah.
And so this is the mentality they come with, right? Ultimately, and so this if you look at this, yes, those people, the Israelis, Zionists, yeah, they would press that button. But the Muslims who are real Muslims, they wouldn't.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sure there are people amongst
course.
Palestinians who would push that button.
But no,
I'm sure, and maybe there's many of them, hundreds, maybe thousands, right? But Islam, and this is important, where it's good to differentiate Islam from the Muslim a little bit here. Islam, there's a reason behind an objective morality, right? A God-given morality. I don't decide what's good and bad.
Fear of God.
Today I feel this. Today, tomorrow I feel that. I mean, for example, being gay was shunned in America even 20, 30 years ago, let alone 100 years ago. And now, being gay is fine. Being trans is fine. Being an adulterer is fine. And no one looks down on really any of this, any significant, repercussions from these kind of actions. And so, no, but Islam would be like, okay, you know what? Murder is wrong today, is wrong tomorrow. Is wrong yesterday, is going to be wrong today, and it's going to be wrong tomorrow. Same thing when it comes to incest or rape or any number of terrible things. Stealing, right? There's no such thing as Robin Hood. You can't steal from the rich and give to the poor, because thieving is always wrong, right? So that's the purpose of objective morality. And so technically, if a Muslim, if he's acting as a good Muslim, then you could never push that button, killing millions of innocent, women, children, non-combatants, and stuff like that. So
because that button would take you straight to hell.
But yeah, you're a murderer.
Yeah,
you'd be a murderer overnight.
Yeah, that button would take you straight to hell, and then if you ever care about your hereafter, you would never.
Would Muslims never nuke their enemies?
No, because
I actually don't think you can, because your goal is to minimize. Not only, we can't even hurt animals for no reason in war.
I get it.
We can't burn trees and stuff for no reason. There are times.
Muslims will not, actually.
Yeah.
You could not.
You could not.
No.
That
now,
means you don't
now
need to
would
nuke them.
would some ruler decide to? Yeah, and then he'll pay the consequences that we believe. He will be held very accountable.
Yeah.
But a human being could do anything.
Look, I don't endorse nuking, but I'm just saying,
A human being could do anything.
if an enemy knew that for sure you're never going to nuke them, even if they nuke you.
But nobody knows for sure.
See,
I mean, by the way, if
the
an
same
enemy
thing
knew
with
for sure, if an
Pakistan and
enemy had
India.
so much faith in your religion that they knew you would never do it, like, then they would just join your religion. But they always have this doubt.
So in my thing is the majority of Muslims will consider a bad thing. But the funny thing is, I find it the
The vast
opposite in
majority.
America. I remember growing up. I remember talking to these young kids and stuff in high school, and they were essentially taught this: that had they not nuked Japan, more lives would have been lost.
They say this today. They say this
I
till
know.
this day.
But this is something they firmly believe. But there is not. It's like, as a Muslim, I would feel major guilt. You're not even nuking an army. You're nuking two cities, civilian cities, right? Okay, yeah, you could have nuked their air bases or their main military structure. That could have probably stopped the war to a degree, right?
Just seeing the power
Yeah.
would have stopped the war.
Nuking
crap, they could
two
nuke us.
cities
Yeah.
of civilians, and then claiming that it was a morally just decision because it was for the greater good. See, this kind of line of thinking, majority of Muslims probably would not have. That's what my always claim is
By
the
the
majority.
way, there is a significant amount of debate on whether that stopped the war, or was it the fact that the Russians invaded in the north? Because the Russians also made landfall right around the same time, or right after the nukes happened. And you can make a significant argument that the reasons the Japanese actually surrendered was because the Russians made landfall.
So it's not about what the reality is.
But there's many things
We're
here.
not talking about reality. We're actually talking about the line of thinking, right? What their moral claim is.
Yeah, but I'm
That's
just
the
saying,
problem I
look,
have with, right?
But I just remember this as a kid, though. The first time I was told this, must have been late elementary school, maybe early middle school, right? This
It
whole
felt wrong.
concept, right? It's like, I'm like, wait. And this was instant, right? I was like, but you can't equate the two. Because first, there's two things. One is the claim may or may not be true. There, hypothetically, more lives could have been lost. One, it's not a fact.
Yeah.
If we're just counting life for life.
No, but
If all lives are equal.
The reason I brought this up is because it challenges their own moral argument. Their argument is because we did this war stop. No, it could have stopped even if you didn't.
No, but
do
let's
it.
say
Sure.
But let's say
they're
that
right,
was the
though.
reason it stopped.
Yeah, but let's
I
say
still
they're
think
right.
it's wrong.
No, I'm just taking the claim as it is, at face value. They're saying if we didn't, more lives would have been lost. Okay, one, you can't know that for sure. You're guessing and doing some stats or whatever. Okay?
American lives.
No, they're just saying lives.
Lives in
They said
general.
lives.
Lives.
Because they're trying to take a moral high ground here, right?
Yeah.
And the second part about this is what Pages brought up, right? Where straight up, you cannot compare nuking a city center,
Civilians.
civilian population, men, women, children, and not to mention the side effects of radiation, right? That's a completely separate issue. But let's just take the lives lost. Let's just say it's a normal bomb, no atomic residue, right? You can't compare that to,
Armies.
to armies combating each other and losing, even if it is millions of soldiers.
But
losing their
they're
lives.
soldiers.
It's not the same.
Yeah, they're soldiers. They're combatants.
Yeah, they're
combatants dying is part of war. Civilians dying
It's not a part of
it's
war.
not part of war. It should not. You should
So
not
I
target
mean
civilians.
that I find even at that time I found ridiculous, and now it's just obvious that's ridiculous. And anyone who believes such is a fool.
Yeah. So I'd say like a lot of these claims and all these moral arguments, underlying they have no morality. There's no basis for them. These wild claims by Israel, their projection, because they themselves, cling to this world and they have no perception of the air. I say Americans have a stronger moral sense of the repercussions of the actions that they take in this life, how it could affect their next life, than other people. I'm only talking about America here.
Yeah.
I think America has a strong sense of morality and what consequences it might have on their hereafter.
It's the reason why the Western world often finds Americans' conservativeness
Puritans.
weird, because I would say places like the UK and France and a lot of Europe, right? The EU has, religion doesn't play a huge role in their lives, while for Americans, many Americans, it still does. I don't see, not that I've heard any of the even conservative party people in UK saying, Bible first, I swear by God, this, that, the other. But over here, Trump has to swear by the Bible, and he has to be like, "Isn't this such a great book, The Art of the Deal? It's the best after the Bible, the best book after the Bible." But he has to do that, right?
Let's do that. Yeah.
Because many Americans, I would say majority even potentially, are God conscious at the very least.
Yeah.
They have taqwa, some amount of taqwa.
They have some God consciousness, right, in their mind, which that is a huge boost to morality.
Yeah.
Right.
Because now they know that there are, regardless if they're agnostic or whatever, they're like, "Hey, look, man, I gotta act more honorably," versus someone who can just follow their whims. I'm gonna do no harm, whatever the heck that means, right?
Yeah.
I think it's been a good talk. There's other things I wanted to talk about, but we'll push it to next time. I think it's been long enough. There's a lot about AI and some chess drama. Has been a lot of stuff happening there, but we can talk about that next time, inshallah. But jazakumullah khair for listening. Sorry we missed
1 week.
one week in there, but we'll try to be as regular as possible. And please like, subscribe, share with people. And inshallah, we'll see you all next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.